The reason religions are so popular is because they try to answer these 5 big questions.
Don't ask questions you aren't prepared to handle the answer to.
Hello everyone, I'm Professor Plank. I respond to various theological and ideological questions and claims from a rationalistic and naturalistic approach in an effort to give and explain the opposite viewpoint and help to balance the conversation. Today we're hearing another tidbit of tepid wisdom from the channel Road Trip to Truth. And in this short one, John is going to be telling us that religion is popular because it seeks to answer 5 crucial questions that everyone needs to have answers to. I mean, I would disagree right at the outset. Seems to me all of the most popular world's religions are popular not because they answer a few questions, but because they employ indoctrination techniques that they impose upon their congregants when they're young and ensnare their hearts and minds for the rest of their lives. Additional reasons, such as cultural conformity, legal mandate, societies incentivizing participation in said religion, persecution and oppression of those not within the religion, and several other factors, all have historically and contemporarily had significant impacts on various religions' popularity, far more so than any of the actual content of the belief system. But sure, some people do gravitate towards various religious beliefs because of their attempts to answer some existential questions that many people are seeking answers to. But of course, those questions are going to be different from person to person. Not everyone is stymied by the same quandaries. And just because a religion has supposed answers to existential questions is absolutely no proof of those answers being correct to even the slightest degree. But let's at least hear what John thinks the 5 most important questions are that every religion must answer and that every human is in dire need of answer to. But before we get to that, if you end up liking what you see in this video and would like to help out the channel, make sure to subscribe and click the bell so you'll always be notified when new content comes out. Check out my social media, including my Patreon and Twitter, all linked in the description. And of course, like this video, pop in a comment. All that goes a long way towards pleasing the YouTube algorithm, the only real answer that any of us truly need to all of life's great questions. May it keep my channel motoring along. Now on to today's video.
How did I get here? Why am I here? How should I live? How should I deal with moral failure? And where am I going when I die?
Okay, so these are the 5 questions John wants to talk about today. So let's start off by dealing with each one of them in turn. Starting off with the first one, how did I get here? Well, not to be glib, but seriously. My parents did the horizontal mambo, tadpole met egg, yada yada yada. 9 months later, a little plink was born. If we're talking more broadly though, as in the human race, well, that would be evolution and natural selection, which is a long story with many twists and turns over literally billions of years, but the whole process that we know for absolutely certain did happen has to lead somewhere, and it led to here and to now with us and all the rest of the life on the planet. And it will continue long after we're gone. That's the how of it, and it's fairly undisputable. Anything beyond that quick TLDR version is pure speculation. Unverified speculation at that, and any claims as to a reason behind any of it is a different question altogether. That would be more a question of why than of how, and that moves us into question 2. Why am I here? The very nature of this question is egotistical. At least it is if you're unwilling to consider or accept the answer of because a lot of life forms that preceded you had a desire to knock boots and procreate, and it eventually led to you. Even though this is a perfectly viable answer and is entirely in keeping with the uncontestable answer to question 1, many atheists can't accept that their existence might just not go any further than that. They have a deep-seated need to believe that they are cosmically special, an integral part of a master divine plan, of critical existential importance.
That's pride fucking with you. Fuck pride. Pride only hurts. It never helps.
It takes a special kind of hubris to think that little old you is so GD special that you need to invent an all-powerful deity in order to justify your own belief in your own smug self-importance. Whether you're here because your parents wanted to have a child to make their family and their lives more complete, or you were the product of an accidental impregnation, or a broken condom, or an experiment to mix a bunch of DNA and it resulted in you having Danny DeVito as your twin brother.
The embryo did split in two, but it didn't split equally. All the purity and strength went into Julius. All the crap that was left over went into what you see in the mirror every morning.
Whoa, you telling me I'm the crap?
What should be of infinitely more importance than why you're here is the next question on John's list. How should I live? The first question on this list that I find to be of any actual importance. And it's a massively complicated one. Tons of factors could be considered in answering it. Questions about what your overall goal in life is. What your responsibility towards others, either individual or society at large, is. Do you want to further that society or work at fundamentally changing it? Do you want to work more on subcultures within that society? Or do you want to have as little impact as possible on anything or anyone? Do you want to help or hinder? Build or tear down? Advance or reflect? Progress or conserve? Or none of the above? The reality is that this question is going to be very different for each individual based on the context of their own life experience and their desires. What one should absolutely not do is attach oneself to a one-size-fits-all framework that was regressive and antiquated when it was formulated and is practically untenable in modern society, which would encompass most of the major religions. Stuff that was cooked up by Bronze Age theocrats who knew little more beyond, that person is different, either make them like us or stab them till they stop moving, then take their women and children and make them like us. A good litmus test for whether or not your theistic framework is one worth following is if it mandates going out of your way to make life fundamentally worse for other people. If it does, then don't follow it. So religious frameworks that tell you to take slaves or child brides, subjugate women, beat children, oppress within society those who aren't part of your religion, deny rights to those your religion deems sinful, and generally pushes a narrative that insists on hellfire torture for all time for those who don't think the way that you do, then that's a bad framework, religious or not. Fourth question was, how do I deal with moral failure? Based on your own subjective moral code, resolve to do better in the future. Attempt to make amends to those who have been wronged by your moral failure, if any, and try to be a better person moving forward. That seems a pretty straightforward one to me. I don't know why you would need a religion to answer this one. And then 5, where am I going when I die? And let's be honest here. This is the only one that really matters to religious people, isn't it? I mean, seriously, to the theist, this is the only important question. All of those previous questions were strictly in service of this one. Like the first question, how did I get here? So that I know which God I need to serve to go to heaven. Or why am I here? So I know what purpose I need to fulfill in order to get to heaven. How should I live? So I know exactly what I need to do in order to get to heaven. How do I deal with moral failure? So I know how to properly atone for my wrongdoings and be able to get into heaven. I mean, this is really all it comes down to. Everything could be boiled down to a simple, tell me everything I need to know in order to amass the most cosmic brownie points possible so that I can use them to buy my way into the good place. I mean, this is why Puritans could burn accused witches with smiles on their faces and hymns on their lips while the women screamed on the pyre. Because the pain and suffering they were causing was meaningless in the face of all the good God points that they were building up by doing so. That's why modern zealots can pass law after law that absolutely devastates the lives of LGBTQ people, or harass and malign people in their communities of other faiths, or viciously abuse children because of a passage in their holy book about sparing the rod and spoiling the child. None of the harm they directly cause matters in the face of the belief that they're getting closer to passing the pearly gates. Now for me, the answer to this question is fairly easy. As an individual, I will no longer exist after I die. So give my remains to whomever can best use them. Whatever is left that no one wants, burn up and throw away. Matters not to me because I won't exist anymore. And I see no evidence that leads me to think that anything supernatural or anything that could be deemed an afterlife exists. All fairy tales of such things exist as a comforting self-deception to not have to deal with the existential dread of blinking out of existence. And if that's all it was, I could say fine, live comfy in your delusion. But when it almost always comes with all the aforementioned baggage of religious dogma that people are so quick and willing to engage in the hope of getting their harp and halo, it becomes not just a problem for all those that you will injure and oppress in your zeal to get right with the God that you believe in, but it's also a stain on your own character when it drives you to make life worse for other people. Alright, so those were the questions and what I think about them, so what else have you got to say about them, John?
Whether you believe in God or not, everyone, from Aristotle to Ariana Grande, tries to answer these 5 questions because they're hardwired into our DNA.
Excuse me, the fuck did you just say?
Hardwired into our DNA? I mean, I will cop to a certain intrinsic curiosity about pretty much everything being a fundamental part of the human experience, and that would include the desire to study and understand things like evolution, biology, philosophy, sociology, and the like. And that could account for your first few questions. But that's not saying that those questions specifically are hardwired into us, and we seek answers to those questions above all others. We tend to seek to understand damn near everything we can about the world around us, and that's undoubtedly going to include learning about ourselves in the process. And depending on the individual, a biologist is going to be far more interested in discovering where life originated than they would be concerned about what constitutes moral behavior. And for a philosopher, it'd be vice versa. And an engineer might not care that much about either of those things. And a bus driver or a plumber might not give 2 shits about any of those questions. But certainly that last one, about where I'm going when I die, doesn't seem to be one that everyone is all that interested in. I mean, a fair amount of people don't even believe in any sort of afterlife. Even in the US, one of the most religious societies in the Western world, only about 1 in 6 Americans even believe in any kind of an afterlife. And then in Europe, those numbers go down significantly, depending on the country. And depending on the way the surveys that were responded to were worded. Many of those who rank as non-believers might be unsure or open to the possibility, but not wanting to commit. But the larger point still stands that a significant number of people aren't too concerned with the idea of where they're going when they die. Certainly not enough to point to the idea that it's encoded in our DNA.
And much like a computer needs an operating system to run, you and I need answers to these 5 big questions to run.
What the hell kind of an analogy is that? A computer needing an operating system would be like our brain needing consciousness. And, by the way, neither of those is necessarily the case. A computer can still turn on if it doesn't have an operating system, it just can't do much of anything. And a person without consciousness, like, say, a person in a persistent vegetative state, can still be alive. They just can't do much. But anyway, if a person had no concept of those 5 questions, could they function? I don't see why not. You could be raised by wolves with no notion of where you came from, no concept of religion or an afterlife, or any notion of how you ought to behave in terms of morality, and still get by just fine. I mean, you wouldn't expect Mowgli to just keel over because he didn't have a concept of heaven and hell, or Tarzan's heart would just explode because he lived too long without knowing who his parents or people were.
In fact, having the wrong answers or simply ignoring these questions will lead to a jacked up operating system.
Having the wrong answers, and then the word evolution gets typed on the screen.
Fucking idiot.
How so? Existential anxiety, despair, depression, inexplicable angst, and even rage are all repercussions of running sloppy code.
Okay, I'm actually going to agree with John on this one, because all of those things he just listed existential anxiety, despair, depression, inexplicable angst, and rage were all things that I experienced chronically as a Christian. In the years since becoming an atheist, literally all of those things have disappeared. Now, first and foremost, it should be noted that all of those things can be from all sorts of sources, or even no sources at all. Depression, anxiety, rage, these things can be due to chemical imbalances in your brain, and if you suffer from these conditions, you should never be afraid to seek professional help from psychiatrists who can help you get these problems under control. There are plenty of psychiatric problems that having all the right answers in the world won't address without the help of mental and medical professionals. But if what John said about having the wrong answers causes these issues in people not biologically prone to them, and getting the right answers can alleviate that, then theism, specifically Christianity, must be wrong. Since it gave me depression, despair, and existential anxiety, and atheism and naturalism must be correct, since when I adopted that way of thinking, all of those problems drifted away, and I've been much healthier and happier ever since. So by John's own rationalization, religion must be wrong, and not believing in anything supernatural must be correct.
What is this sloppy code? Any incoherent answers to the 5 big questions. Answers that do not correspond to reality.
As in, all the nonsensical fairy tale answers provided by pretty much every religion? Answers that don't respond to reality, like that everything was poofed into existence magically 6,000 years ago for the benefit of a dirt man and rib woman who listened to a talking snake and ate a magic fruit. And that's why you all deserve to go to hell from the moment you're born.
This leads to the question: which religious system, if any, has a coherent code?
Well, a brief moment of honesty right there at the tail end from John. I fully expected him to just say which religion is right and end it there. And then his other videos would go on to push Christianity as the correct religion. But he actually threw in the if any part as well, showcasing at least a fleeting acknowledgement of the possibility that no religion is correct. But of course, then with all of his other videos, which are pure Christian apologia, through and through, he never goes back to this possibility that there might not be a God or an afterlife or divine purpose or plan. Just falls right back to the insistence that these 5 questions are of paramount importance for all people everywhere for all time. I submit that the reason these kinds of questions are so ubiquitous in modern society is not that we have some kind of deep intrinsic need and desire to answer them, but because we exist in a society that is so steeped in religion, and those questions are so fundamental to religion, that these questions get imposed upon us from the moment we're born and all throughout the days of our lives. Religion insists upon itself. It insists that these questions are fundamentally important and that everyone must answer them. And so, when you're asked the same questions over and over again each and every day of your life, yeah, everyone's going to have some manner of answer to them. But that doesn't mean that they're hardwired into our DNA. I mean, if I had a child, and from the moment that that child was born, I'm always telling them stories about dragon riders, and all of the different ways that they can ride their dragons. You know, saddle or no saddle, seated in front of the wings or behind them, on the head, or the neck, or the back, or even the tail. Stirrups or no, riding crop or no. And in all the stories, these choices are of utmost importance. We even attend services every week that talk about the importance of dragon riding style. They watch movies about dragon riding. It's in the music they listen to, on the clothes they wear. They go to camp every summer that talks all about the dragon riders and how they ride their dragons. With all of that, do you think my child would come up with their answer to how best to ride a dragon? Now, do you think that question is hardwired into their DNA? Or they just were inundated with it so much for so long that they couldn't help but develop their own answers? Questions of God, questions of the afterlife, questions of the supernatural in general are not baked into the pie that is humanity. It's the topping that's thrown onto us as soon as we come out of the oven that we damn near drown in if we aren't careful. And as toppings go, it's a bit like putting sardines on a slice of strawberry rhubarb. It just makes everything nasty. So I'll admit to there being a real use and benefit to seeking the actual answers to some of those questions, as in the things that we can actually discern from reality, like how life arose and evolved, what ways of structuring society lead to the best outcomes in respect to individuals' rights and societal success, or how do we cope with what we view as our failures in life. But questions that by their very nature insist upon life after death and speculation about what actions one needs to take to get to the good place, or the necessary existence of an all-powerful deity and who he wants you to hurt and oppress in order to get in his good graces, these questions aren't just useless, they're cancerous to an individual's psyche, character, and society as a whole. So that is where we'll end things for today. So thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like this video, comment, and subscribe so you'll always be notified when a new video comes out. Don't forget to check me out on Twitter and Patreon if you'd like to support my work directly. My Teespring if you want some Plinky merchandise. All that linked below in the description. Until next time, I'm Professor Plink reminding you to keep striving for greater understanding. It's the best way to get wherever you want to go.